Alrighty, folks. Welcome back to another episode of Mushing Alaska. We're excited for our next episode. Our guest, Dan Carter, we had a good time with him the other day recording, and he's got a wide perspective of things to talk about. So I certainly enjoyed that. But before we go down that rabbit hole, Sean, how's it going, dude?
Oh, pretty good. I'm doing all right. I have enjoyed a random Wednesday off today. I've been working at the local school, and they didn't need me today. I was like, all right, I'm not going to ask why. And I'm been enjoying. I'm drinking coffee. It's 4:00 in the afternoon. I'm drinking coffee.
Jeez, this guy, gotta love it.
But no, it's really nice. The last couple of days here has been snowy in interior Alaska, and it's almost time to bust out the snow machines and the dog sleds and the skis and snowboards. It's getting there. People clearing out some space on their frozen lake to play some pond hockey. It's kind of like, I don't know. I feel like everybody, whether it's their 30th winter or it's their first winter, it's just something magical about that first, it's cold, it's below freezing, it's snowing, it's, the warmest it gets, 30 degrees. It's just exciting. So I'm excited. I think a lot of people around here are.
At what point, I do remember last year, there seemed to be a very small window where a lot of people, including yourself, were doing the frozen ponds, frozen river, whatever, skating.
Yeah,
I have not seen much of that yet on the socials. What can you tell me?
I like last year when I did it, my friend was like, dude, you should join this like Facebook group that's like wild ice skating or whatever in Alaska. And it's just like, it's literally like, it's 25% of my Facebook is just like, it's July, like, stop, guys, calm down. But yeah, there's, if you go deep enough into the mountains, there's some really incredibly good wild, lakes and that have thick ice. And so I'm starting to see the real go-getters that are willing to hike out, 5, 7, 8 miles or whatever from the trailhead uphill and into the higher alpine lakes. It's begun. And then like the ones that are certainly people are ice skating in my neighborhood right here. You didn't have to, go hiking to do it. But yeah, it's not quite, it's still October. What is it? Like
23rd as we record it, 23rd.
Yes, October 23rd. I mean, it's still not quite winter yet, but it feels like it's stage 1, and it's exciting. So anyways,
right on.
Yeah.
Right on.
I haven't gone ice skating yet, but I will. I'm going down to Anchorage for this weekend, and I think I'm going to bring my ice skates just in case. It's not like they take up a lot of room.
Yeah, that's a smart idea. You never know. And in terms of the mushing scene, since our last episode, there isn't like a whole bunch of new news or new items necessarily to discuss. But you and I were talking, and it's just kind of it's fun seeing the season is up and running. It's fun seeing all the different kennels and what they're up against, and seeing some that are like still on drier land or with minimal snow, and then like you and I were talking about like Jesse Holmes just fucking sending it in 3-foot deep snow with his dogs breaking trail. Like it's October 23rd, and that's what I'm seeing from Jesse Holmes. It's just like, man, when I think about this season, I think that I'm putting him up at the top in terms of seeing how he does, especially at the Iditarod. So I got my eyes on him early in the season, and hoping him to see him do really well this year. So, but is there anything else that kind of stood out to you that you've seen, or just that might be worth mentioning?
Yeah, I mean, Jesse Holmes has been standing out all summer. I guess you could really say he's been standing out for years, but um, yeah, he's certainly leading the charge, or as far as quality and quantity of miles trained with his dogs. I think he was running, multiple hour long runs and throughout the summer, and now they've got all this snow and they're, wallowing through 2 or 3 feet of fresh snow. I think he's got sometimes, like, I feel like setting up that like base of like, and that foundation for your winter of training for your team is it sets you up for like, how am I gonna, now that they've broken through to being at this standard of physical condition, how am I gonna uh approach the peak of training? And so it changes based on just how well the dogs, like, you can say I'm going to run 800 miles by October 23rd, but then like the conditions change and the X, Y, Z, all these factors change. And then you're like, well, maybe I should take it a little easier as we get into the peak of November, December, January training. And so he seems like he's really set himself up. So now it's just like this, like, really tough. It's really difficult to be managing all these dogs and their individual needs and their needs as a team. And you've got them in such great condition right now, so early. And some people I think, are quick to say, oh yeah, like, I don't even really take them on a 20-mile run until it's Thanksgiving, and he did that in summertime. Really never stopped since. And I think that if you keep your dogs moving, that's going to be something they're going to need. Obviously, they're going to need some time off or whatever, but like, keeping them fit. I mean, when you look at any other professional athlete, they're not like, oh, I'm going to take like 4 months to go play Xbox. It's like they still need to stay fit in the off season. And now they've got this base of training. And so I think what's challenging for Jesse now that you've got it all set up, I think, nicely, is choosing how, when, and how to run your dogs moving forward. I mean, this is always a difficult thing, but like, just because they can go on a 200-mile series, let's say, I'm not saying that right now, but let's just say in November, it's like, oh, they're ready for. Does that mean that they should? Is that going to be in their benefit for whatever your goal is? If it's the Iditarod or the Cusco, and so it's tough to make those decisions, because I feel like I've been a part of training where they're like hitting their stride for like peak performance. You're just seeing this is effortless, and it's January 10th. And you're like, okay, how can we like keep this thing that we have right now? How can we keep it for March? And it's hard. I don't know what the answer is. Right. So he's like, but he's going to be knocking at the door in the top 5. And I think you and I, it's not like a controversial statement to say like he's probably going to win the Iditarod at some point, not be this year. He's going to win it. Like, if he just keeps doing what he's doing, and he's getting smarter and smarter and more experience and more experience. So I'm excited for him, but I do want to say he's active on the socials. There's lots of people that are grinding, and they're quietly grinding. I think of,
that's true,
Dan Caduce comes to mind. Like, I'd never seen anything from his corner, and he goes and finishes third in Iditarod, and you're just like, no one was talking about Dan Caduce in October.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, there's, we got to reel it into. It's like, yeah, he gets the good photo and the good content, but there's other people that don't have the good photo and the good content, and they're getting the good training, and nonetheless,
Right. Yep. Right on. Well, I think that our guest for this episode, I really enjoyed having Dan Carter on. He's an Iditarod veteran from 2007. And so he kind of gave us his perspective as a musher, but he's also, you got into the different terminology, race director, correct?
Race director
of the Wyoming Stagecoach stage stop race. And for me, being the the one not living in Alaska and not as much a part of the scene just from my house here in Atlanta. It was just super eye-opening to hear his perspective as race marshal, for the race. Just a stage stop race is different than anything that I've been like educating on myself on in Alaska. So just I really, really enjoyed our time with Dan, and I think it was a little bit outside of our normal box, and I'm cool with it. Like a lot of times we have mushers and mushers only on, right? And so we kind of just get that perspective. But I really, really enjoyed just hearing the different aspects of the Wyoming stage stop race, how it's put together. Yeah, just you all will, I think, really enjoy a different perspective. In terms of most of our content is based in Alaska, right? So that was my initial opening thoughts on our guest this week. Sean, what are your thoughts? Where you're at with things?
Yeah, I mean, I think the stage stop race, learning about that from Dan, who's probably one of the most knowledgeable people that you could ever talk to about the Wyoming stage stop. He's been doing it for he's ran it 6 times, and he's been part of the organization for several years, and is now the race director. So it's cool. We were just grilling him with the questions about it, and I've always heard, the Wyoming stage stop. And when I'm up here, they're like, yeah, it's like a stage race. They just do like 50 miles a day or whatever, 30 miles a day or 60 miles a day. It's like we got to go into the nitty gritty details of all that, and it was really cool. I came away with it with like a very clear, I'm like, wow, this kind of event is like really, really good for the whole scene. Because like, it's really good to be getting experience if you want to make it to 1,000-mile event one day or to a 300-mile, race. This is like that race is like such a good building block, and it's in itself is very challenging event. And it's so like, just imagine, I'm always around these events where everyone's all sleep deprived, and you're just trying to grind through, whether you're part of the race or you're just part of the organization or a volunteer. Everybody's tired. It's like, seems like a pretty cool environment to just be like, all right, we got 30 miles of running.
Yeah,
and
no,
being a fan,
that's
cool.
what stood out to me. Like, so if you're not familiar, a stage race, essentially, like Dan said, is like a Tour de France. So every day there's a different stage of the race, but it's just that length. And then you have the rest of the day to do as you will, well, within reason, to do as you may. And like he talked about, like they have lodging and hotels for them and stuff. So like, imagine every day you get to start the race where you like slept in a bed, and sounds really interesting. The thing to me that like for anyone who's newer into the scene of mushing, I think that it would be a great event to consider. Like I don't want to give all the details away, but just like I thought it was cool. And Sean, I think his mind was blown. Like each day, the last person from the day before starts each day. So it's like a reverse order each day. And then like something that really kind of popped out to me is like, the purse you get paid, based on where you place and whatnot, but they also have top 10 for each day. So you have a chance at each day if you can win money based on how you do for an individual day. So for me, on all those reasons, I just really enjoyed learning about like a different style race, something that I'm not used to. And I just think he had a different perspective on things. And I think that you all will enjoy that.
Yeah, Dan's just seems like a solid, like a businessman. He's like a spoken guy, and it was cool to learn about stage stop. And I do hope to get down there and check it out one of these years, and I think it's probably not as popular as going into most sporting events. So it's like probably pretty accessible if you're like a casual fan wondering what should I do for a vacation in January. Maybe go to Wyoming, and it's a little, I would say it's cheaper, but honestly, Jackson, that's the last thing I've heard about Jackson Hole, but it's probably cheaper than coming all the way up here. So,
yeah.
But yeah, it was a cool conversation. And me and Dan, basically what this podcast was, what you're about
95% you and him broing out, and me throwing in like a 5%, like, oh, what's this? What's that? Dude, I was trying, man, but you were synced up. So I was just like, all right, well, sometimes I don't need to hear my voice, but I for me, it was just awesome to get a different perspective on things. And I just, I look forward to getting a chance to meet Dan down the road. And, I know you guys got a chance to kind of be out there on the Iditarod Trail at a couple different checkpoints. And I'm sure that having someone like Dan around you made the experience even better. So yeah, anything else that any other notes you want to leave on before we turn it over to the interview?
No, I think Dan, I really appreciated Dan reaching out he was like, I'd like to be, if you ever want to have me on, I'm be more than happy to do it. A lot of times I'm kind of like roping people in, like they're like, you want to be on the podcast? They're like, yeah, totally want to be on the podcast. And then I see them like 2 months later, they're like, fuck, it's Shawnee. Hey, what's up, man? You want to be on the podcast? They're like, God, yeah, totally. So it's nice to hear Dan just reach out and be like, yo, if you want me on, I'll come on. And he's on a few days later. So thanks, Dan.
Yeah. So on that note, big thanks to Dan for joining us. We hope you all enjoy.
Alrighty, folks, welcome back to Mushing, Alaska. We got Dan Carter, Iditarod veteran, and race official, Iditarod race official, as well as you have been involved for a long time with the Wyoming stage stop, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yeah, 6-time veteran. I was a chief timer for a couple of years, and I've been the director of that event since 2014.
The director. All right, firstly, with the Iditarod, like there's the race marshal, which is like a singular guy. Been Mark Norman for a lot of years. Then there's the race official, which is not a singular person. There's many race officials that are at all the different checkpoints. So as a race director, I don't even know if an Iditarod has like a director position, but there's also the CEO guy, which is Rob Burbach. And so there's all these like, as a guy, me, who has not spent much time in a business environment, they all sound like they could be the guy that's in charge, but they all are in charge, but of different, sections. So race director, what would that be like? Because was that closer to being Rob Burbach? Is that closer to being Mark Norman for that race? Is it closer to being?
So yeah, there's similarities and differences between the organizational structure of Iditarod and Stage Stop. Iditarod is a larger animal for sure. It has more full-time employees, or volunteers, quite a bit. It's logistically, it's a Goliath. So Iditarod, you've got Rob Burbach, CEO, and then and they have a board too, which has quite a few members on that board. I don't know the exact number, but professional people that have come in from, I think, mostly the Anchorage and Greater Alaska area. But anyway, and then you've got, Mark Nordman, who's the race director, and he also used to wear the race marshal hat. So now as director, my understanding, don't want to speak for Mark, but he's in charge of overall, like, everything logistically that happens to put the event on. And I'm sure he deals with some other stuff too. And then now with Warren Palfrey as race marshal, he's in charge of his staff of officials. He works closely with Iditarod Air Force and the lead vet as well as some other committee members. And he's more about the race officiating and making sure that the checkpoints are staffed properly with race judges, with comms people, with veterinarians and so forth. Not that he oversees the veterinarians or the comms people, but really the care and custody of all the checkpoints is my understanding is under the race marshal, make sure they're staffed. And then at each individual checkpoint, the race judge is kind of the go-to person for that. Now with the stage stop, not quite as big, but I would kind of be a mixture of the Rob Urback and the Mark Nordgren combined. And then I'm lucky enough to also have Warren Palfrey as my race marshal.
Oh, okay. I'm connecting some dots because I just met Warren for the first time this year, but I'd heard about him and stuff. And so, okay, now it's good. This is good. This is good. Juices are flowing.
Yeah.
So, with the stage stop, I will come back to Iditarod, but I've never really like put in a lot of time like paying attention to that race. You know, there's a lot of races going on this year. I'm just, it's called the podcast is called Mushing Alaska. So the reality is I'm following mostly Alaskan mushing events.
Sure.
And some of them just kind of fall between the cracks. And so I've heard a lot of things about this race and never been to it. How long has it been around? How long has the Wyoming stage stop been around?
First year was 1996. So this is the 30th anniversary.
Okay.
Yeah.
30th anniversary, 96. That doesn't add up. Isn't that 28?
I don't think so. If you say 2025, you count the starting year.
You're right. Okay. Yep. This is why you're the race director.
Yeah. I hope I got it right. That's be a big oops.
You got like all this like swag, like 30-year anniversary. And you're like, actually it's 29.
Hold the presses.
The cross out to 30, right? 39 and all the t-shirts.
Yeah. But I mean, I jump in here real quick. So Frank Teasley started the stage stop and he was, mainly an Iditarod musher. And then he wanted to start a race in Wyoming and, kind of a mushers race, as he called it. And, the first year that he did that, Susan Butcher came down, Rick Swenson won it. Terry Atkins ran in it. I mean, it was drawing some big names, and I did a count a couple of years ago. There's been like close to 30 Iditarod mushers who have run the stage stop, including Jeff King, who won the second or third stage stop. And Lance Mackey has run it. Aaron Burmeister has run it. There's a lot of Iditarod folks who've come down at some point and run the stage stop. And Doug Swingley, Hans Gott, he won it 4 times, but it's changed. It used to be to where, Iditarod mushers could come to Wyoming in late January and put on some good training runs because the runs were longer that kind of fit generally into their sort of mileages at that point in their training. They might have been adjusting a little bit, but so they could come down to Wyoming and fit it into their training and make some pretty good money to sort of, keep fuel in the truck for the rest of the season.
Okay.
But and Jock Fleet, so we used to draw, all these teams, and then those teams, a lot of those Lloyd Gilbertson, a lot of those Iditarod style mushers that were bringing 2, Doug Swingley would sometimes bring 3 teams to stage stop, and they kind of retired out and went on to other things. And that's when we decided to make the switch and reduce the mileage. So it was a hard decision, but I think it was the right decision.
So this is Brendan. Let me chime in here. I'm looking at the website because I'm trying to get my mind behind this race. Again, if you're not familiar with our podcast, Sean's the one in Alaska. I'm the one in Atlanta. I only really know a very small percentage of things. But
downplay yourself, dude. You know,
I'm trying,
dude.
I'm
At this
trying.
point, come on, dude.
Fair enough. All right, but what I'm seeing is it looks like a stage race means that like each day is a different checkpoint, and like are you just doing that one section of the race that one day and then you move on kind of thing? Can you kind of tell me a little bit more about what a stage race even means?
Yeah. So think Tour de France, but with dog mushers and dog teams and in Wyoming and not in France. So we have a ceremonial start in downtown Jackson, which is pretty cool. I mean, they shut down some streets. They take snow that they've been removing all winter and put it back, kind of like in Anchorage. And we have kind of a celebration on the town square, and that's the kickoff. But then we start to travel, and each day is a different stage that is hosted by a different Western Wyoming community. So we have a start and finish each day and accumulate, time, and whoever completes the entire course at the end of it is a champion.
Nice.
Okay.
So that's the general format. And it's cool because, it's different terrains, different mountain ranges. And, if you haven't been to Western Wyoming, it's just like, Rocky Mountain West from, Arizona, all the way up through into the Yukon, and, it's gorgeous. So it's a great event. It's a lot of fun. People enjoy it. It's out and back. So we kind of set up our own little village at the starting area for that day in the parking lot with, all the musher trucks and our media and all our race organizers. We have a concession trailer that we set up and fire that thing up, like before the sun's up. You can go over there and get a free hot cup of coffee or hot chocolate. And then, we'll do like biscuits and gravy or breakfast burritos or whatever we can dream up. And then at some point we switch it over to like hot soup or hot chili. So it's like a village at the staging area, and that's all free. Anybody that walks up to that concession trailer, we'll give them some stuff.
I will show up. I will spend the $850 flight. My free biscuits and gravy, baby. Let's go.
You guys should show up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot closer to you, Brennan. Might be
might even be able to hook you up with some lodging.
Hell
so you guys think about that.
Okay. All right. Jackson Hole is on the list. I mean, I've only heard amazing things from people who've been there. So let's talk about this, man. Let's figure out a way to get there.
I did get to visit. It is a beautiful zone. Just in general in Wyoming, driving around and checking out the national parks and whatnot. I'm going to continue to grill you with questions about this race here because I'm getting a complete picture. We can just alternate, but the next one is like, you've got just, you don't have to go too lost in the weeds, but just firstly, what was the format and what is the format? And, because you have stage races, we've got multiple days. Are you starting staggered, kind of like these races up here? Or are you just, everyone has their individual time? Or is it I don't know, how does the timing of things work? I guess I never really watched Tour de France that closely.
Yeah.
Except for, Lance, before he got caught, I thought he was pretty cool. And I wore his little yellow thing.
Hey, everybody was doing it.
Yeah, the Live Strong thing. But hey, he seems like, what I don't even know what to think of him. Anyways, moving on.
So I'll start out with the original format back in the early days when Frank started the race. It was a pretty cool idea. So it was all point to point. So Frank and his team of organizers would set up a starting area, and they'd send all the mushers out at like 3-minute intervals, typical to any race start. And they'd get them all out on the trail. Then they'd mop up that starting area, load everything up into the trucks and rigs and trailers and whatever. And then they'd drive the highway system around the mountains while the mushers were running on the trails through the national forest. They'd get to the other end of the trail at another town or whatever, and set up a finish line and catch them when they got there. And these were longer runs. I mean, there was 80+ mile runs in the race, and for a while there were 4 campouts where you'd camp out with your dogs, and it was an Iditarod qualifier, and Mark Nordman was the race marshal back then.
Wait, hold on. So is that, and that wasn't a stage then? That wasn't a stage
It's still a stage race. You're still starting to finish each day. They were just longer stages, and they were all point to point.
Right. So then how could you, so like you guys, it was kind of like an exception to the, like Iditarod qualifying. Like when I think about Iditarod qualifier, I'm thinking it's going to have that format of like clock starts at the start line, ends at the finish line. You got to hit your mandatory rest at the checkpoints.
Well, it
So
was
this one. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, it was, I mean, as long as it was 11 stages, and they were all pretty long.
11?
Yeah.
Dude, that's
And
crazy.
I think the shortest
is like
one,
11 days.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah. And some of these runs were really long. Like the average length was probably about 60 miles. Longest was 80+ miles.
Wow.
And mountainous terrain. There were 4 campouts. And
So what do you mean by campouts? It would mean like on the 80 that you got to take a camp in the middle of it or something?
Mhm. Yeah. Either
And that's like a mandatory camp out?
yeah. So no handlers for that night.
And then for every other place that you stopped, you could have handlers taking care of your dogs and team and stuff?
Yeah, just sleep in a hotel or whatever.
God, that's pretty sweet.
Ooh,
But
okay.
you know, to manage your team through that, you know,
Yeah.
in that terrain. And I think probably, you know, another thing Nordman probably agreed to call it a qualifier is, you know, there's so much interaction with the vets and other mushers that there's an educational part going on there as well, as
Right.
far as your vet care and your interaction. Because like in Iditarod, you know, you can take off and you may not see half the field the entire race, depending on what group you're running with. But with stage stop, you know, if you're kind of newer guy to mushing trying to get qualified for the Iditarod, and you're hanging out with Doug Swingley and Jeff King and Hans Scott, Jacques Philippe, etc. Bruce Lee ran it several times, you know, so that might have played into it too, in Nordman's consideration that it was it was, and it still is a good place for a musher to educate himself, to accelerate his or her skill sets.
I feel like I feel like in some ways that might even be better than doing these like classic mid distance races, because you're just like in survival mode a little bit, where you're dealing with the sleep deprivation, like you're taking in a lot, but you're like maybe not processing it that well. And like you said, you're kind of on your own program with your team. And yes, you have one or two people that are maybe there at the checkpoints to, point you in the right direction. But like the fact that you got 11 straight days of like networking with the mushing community, whether it's people like you that have been on both sides of it, the mushers or whatever, there's just so much sharing of information. And Dan, more as good as anybody else, that once you get like mushers in the same room, like the stories and like the start flowing, this is the harnesses that I use, and my gang line's 16 and a half feet, and my toe lines to be attaching it on the left and the right, and next thing you know all that stuff is, everybody's doing everything a little bit different. You get to have that's a cool cultural clash.
Well, there's a couple other things too. Is it reverse starting order? So the slowest teams from the day before go out first. So if you had the slowest time today, you go out on tomorrow's race, you go out first. The fastest guy goes out last. And so out there on the trail, this happens. And so if you're the slowest guy, you may be getting passed by everybody, but you're still seeing every other musher's dog team, including Doug Swingley's or, the top guys. You're probably seeing them out on the trail, which can be, educational.
Certainly. That's fascinating. And plus, like, that makes the person that's in last for the previous day's stage become a huge part of the event. Whereas a lot of times, like in the regular format, you get in last place and those people kind of get forgotten.
Yeah.
Maybe the fans or people following, they have their people that they're watching, and I'm watching, some people are watching, but when you're showing up, oh, it's stage 6 and Don Smith or whatever starting out last place guy, everyone's like, who the hell is Don Smith? I don't know, but he's going first and we're excited about it, and that makes them feel like part of something, and they're not just like, oh, I'm back here, I'm never going to catch up. Like, you get to have that. And then the dogs who maybe part of it is the musher, part of it's the dogs. It's certainly, and they get to see the other teams, the dogs, from the dogs' perspective. And now they have a little stimulation. They're like, oh, wow, look at all these other dog teams that are out here doing it. If they're wondering, I don't know if I could.
Your team's getting experience passing and being passed.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's some little bit of a, probably a little bit of a circus, some passes, there's probably, you got the last person is probably got, there's, they're probably not the best at passing. It could happen, but they're learning. They're getting all-star teams coming up behind them, and
yeah, and you'll learn that some of the top mushers don't have very good passing leaders.
Yeah, because in Iditarod, you get out in front, you stay out in front, you pass a couple times.
Yeah, there's no brown spots on the trail. But the other thing is the same vet team is working with you and your team for that entire duration.
But each checkpoint, you get the same veterinarian per team.
Well, the same vet crew, the traveling vet crew of 4 to 5 vets. They're there the whole race. They're there every single day. So they're the same vets are checking your dogs and helping you with your dogs every day. And so there's opportunity to learn more about vet care. So you're developing relationships with just a group of vets, not like just seeing different vets at every checkpoint as you move forward. So that's beneficial. But now the runs are shorter. So average about 30, 35 miles.
11 days still?
No, we're down to 7 days of race.
7 days. Still, that's like,
it's still a great race.
Yeah.
It's just,
full week.
Yeah. Now,
I did that math in my head.
Yeah. We just changed the format because we weren't drawing those types of mushers anymore. And so I remember when we made the change, it took me like a while to get comfortable with it, to decide if it was the right move, because it's hard to go back when we really shortened the distance. I remember we opened entries and we filled the field in, less than a day. So, we're just appealing to a different type of kennel, but
what is the field amount? Sorry.
This year it was 25. This year we limited it to 20 teams, and we've got a full field of 20 teams.
Okay, cool.
So,
and I was curious what the mileage was. I guess it used to be closer to like 400 or 500. Now it's like closer to 200, or
a little over 200 miles probably in total over 7 days.
Gotcha.
So,
and so like the terrain, is it like, is there a lot of mountain climbing going on, or is it, are there running on a river a lot of the time? Can you talk a little bit about just like the terrain that they're going to see on that race?
Yeah, all the trails are on U.S. Forest Service lands, and so in the summertime these are gravel Forest Service roads, and then in the winter, once they get enough snow, they start to groom them with cat groomers. So they're wide and they have been groomed. Hopefully they have a good base. You never know though. All the trails get groomed by cat groomers the night before the race. But we've had situations where we've had weather come in, the trail can get obliterated, and we do our best to punch it out the next morning. We don't have any on river or on lake sections of trail. You can have some runs where you're paralleling a river for all or most of the run. The Green River section out of Pinedale, you follow the upper Green River for a ways, kind of rolling, and then you peel off and climb up and get on top of a ridge, looking out over, the respective mountain ranges and and then come back down and follow the river in. So there's sections where it's, you could say flat, nothing's flat, but, not steady climbing, but there's some trails that have pretty significant elevation gain and loss. So you need to know how to handle your sled, how to train your team for those types of conditions. Particularly how to handle your team coming downhill, for extended periods of time.
Nice. Right on.
So, yeah.
All right. I guess I asked like 7 questions, and then you got one in, Brennan. So I'll ask 7 more. But when you get to the checkpoint, like, how are the vibes? You get vibes at the checkpoints up here, quiet, which is nice. You got the race is spread out in the Iditarod, let's say, but even in the Copper Basin, Cusco, it's not maybe, there's other teams, there's stuff, but like as far as the fans go, it's very tough to access, whether it's because of it being on or off the road system, or it's because it's 3 a.m. So here in this event, it's, obviously all road access. You're doing stage stops. So I'm assuming people aren't ending at 3 a.m. usually, and they're not starting at 3 a.m. either. So how is, you got the veterinarians and the race officials and the mushers and the dog teams, but what from the fans, I'm sure over the years it's ebbed and flowed, and some years you got more people and some checkpoints have more people, but how is, like, that's gotta be like a little bit more fun of a checkpoint environment.
Yeah. The number of fans depends on which stage we're running. Even though there's a host community, some of the trailheads are, out of town a ways. Day of the week, if it's a weekend or a weekday, if it's super cold or really nice.
So like what would be like, sorry to cut you off, I keep doing it, I gotta stop. The craziest environment that you've seen.
Well, the ceremonial start in Jackson is, like 5,000-6,000 people.
Whoa.
Yeah. And then, a lot of the other stages much more relaxed, like if you want to see, excitement in a crowd, go to Jackson. If you want to see a dog race, go to one of the other stages, because you can get there early. You can watch the mushers, doing their thing, their morning process, all of that. You can talk with them, good photography opportunities. And then, the start's very exciting because we've got teams going out, every so often. Once the teams get out, if you want to get a hot cup of coffee or a breakfast burrito or something, you just walk over to the concession trailer. All the handlers are still in the checkpoint while the teams are out on the trail doing their thing. Couple of the checkpoints, it's not unusual for us to have a field trip from a local elementary school come out with a couple of school buses, and that could be a lot of fun. And then, with the 30-mile average trail distance, the speeds that these teams are running, and the fact that we do a reverse starting order, you can watch all the teams go out and then mill around the checkpoint, get you something to eat, something to drink, take some pictures, talk to people, get educated a little bit, on the sport. And then pretty soon the teams are coming back in. And because of the reverse starting order, where you've got this sort of leapfrog happen, we can have, all the teams come in like 15 minutes.
Right.
So for a spectator standpoint, it can be a lot of fun. You're still not, out on the trail, seeing it, like Iditarod Insider is going to present it to you. But we do have cameras out on the trail. We do take video. We do know, even though we're remote, we know the spots where we can pick up and do Facebook Live or something. And then we do produce content out, throughout the day even. I mean, our goal now is to have enough media coming out to where you can kind of feel like you can sit at home and watch the stage progress from, Sebastian Schnull has been our commentator for the last few years, and he does a great job doing pre-race interviews and videos before the teams go out, and then some footage from the trail. and then some musher interviews as they come back, maybe some evening interviews, more extended with mushers, maybe some more in-depth commentary, that kind of thing. So that's kind of our goal, is to get it more, to where you can watch the race, not just look at the results every day, but you can follow it. That's my goal.
That's awesome.
Got to be a big difference being able to deal with mushers that have gotten some sleep and have a little bit more free time to conduct longer interviews and get better access. You can answer this very quickly. It's just a number, or it's just a quick answer. You said they leave in 3-minute intervals. Does the clock start for each musher individually? So you're just like, okay, so and so left at 10:57. I'll just clock them when they come back.
Yeah, we have their start order. They have to leave at that time, so it's not like we have to start the watch. It's like,
all right,
whether you leave at 9:05 or whatever or not, your clock started.
Yeah.
And then when they come back, we just do split times, and we have multiple clocks being used, so we're timing down to the 100th of a second type situation. So very solid times, and it can come down to a second. It's happened.
Wow. That's got to be exciting. So I was just looking at the purse and looking at the breakdown, and I was thinking, Sean, you probably haven't looked at this, or if you have, it's either way, it's worth discussing. So obviously, however you finish the race, you get your where you finish, you get your money based on that. But then they also have day purses. So 1st through 10th get a payout. And then I was curious, Dan, what can you tell me about this musher support program? I don't even.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So our total combined purse now is $200,000, and that's split between 20 teams. And there's 3 ways you can earn money. There's your overall placement. There's, if you get into the day money, any day, which we pay out 1st through 10th for day money. So you can build on that through the race. And then there's the musher support money that comes right from Mars Pedigree. And that's an additional, what is it? 105,000.
Okay.
Ish. Okay. Depending on how you look at it. But the total combined purse is 200,000. The winner's probably going to take home around 28,000. And then if you finish, you're going to get $3,450 minimum.
Yep.
And so what I wanted to do with this purse increase and any future increases is make a situation where a musher who wants to come to stage stop, maybe not so much to win, but to gain experience and have the experience of running in the race, can be somewhat financially viable. So, cover your costs and not lose money by coming to Wyoming. And so that's what I'm trying to do. And hopefully I can continue to add to that purse,
And I'm super impressed with just like, it feels like the event is so well thought out from all the, like, if you're a musher, there's a lot of different like things that you've taken into consideration. If you're, the vet side of it, they're with them the entire way of the race. Like, just the race just sounds so well organized. The other question I had was like, about how many of your 20 teams would you say are local to Wyoming versus coming in from other states?
Right now, we've got one team from Wyoming. That's Alex Crittenden out of Bondurant. She's running a team out of Frank Teasley's kennel. She was actually at the kennel there when I was still working there. I can't remember. Maybe not. But she's been running that team, the race team out of Frank's kennel for 6 or 7 years now. And been fun to watch her really, grow and gain experience. And her best finish is 3rd. But anyway, so we've got mushers this year anyway, from Michigan, Minnesota, I think Wisconsin, Montana, several U.S. states, Colorado, 2 teams out of Colorado, and then we've got some Canadian teams, and then a father and son, father daughter running 2 teams. Each is running a team from Germany, and then we've got a musher coming over from Poland this year. And of course, last year we had Remy Costi come over from France. So it's exciting to have the European teams for sure.
Yeah, that's it's, you got people coming from a lot of different locations, so that's I think that's a testament to the event that you're putting on there. So Sean, did you have any more questions about this event? I know that we have some other topics to discuss, but I didn't know if, I know you had a lot of questions. Whatever you're thinking before you say it, you should unmute yourself.
I think that that covers the questions I have. I've, the things I learned the most, I would say, like some of the standout new facts that I've taken away from the last half hour is that you have the last finishing musher coming first on the following stage day. And the fact that there's been 7 days, it's been as much as 11 days to have like that longevity. I like the differences. Like, I feel like it's easy to, you get stuck in this world that I've been in with these, similar formats for all these events where you start the clock, finish start line, and you end it at the finish line, and whatever happens in between, good luck. There's obviously some mandatory rests and there's rules and whatnot, but I this other format of the stage race is something I'm not as experienced with, and it more I learn, the more I'm like, okay, this is like, it doesn't have to be a sufferfest. And I'm sure there's obviously some challenges, some serious challenges when you have trail conditions varying and really cold temperatures in January in Wyoming. I mean, probably colder in any given year could be colder than some of our races up here. So yeah, really cool to learn about. And you got me excited about the prospect of coming and checking it out one of these years, and seeing. It just seems like such a fun. It's hard to make mainstream mushing, long distance mushing is such a hard thing to follow. So it's just it's a nice step. Towards being a fan event. Hey, if you want to follow this race, it's like a lot. It's a little bit easier, hey, you can show up at the checkpoint, hang out all day. We got B&G, we got burritos, like you guys hang out, you can talk to the mushers, and it's good. It seems like a really good, healthy niche that you guys are filling. So I'm stoked about it. And cool. I didn't know, I just knew so little. Like you can tell by my questions, so this has been highly educational, Dan.
Oh, good.
Yes.
You bet.
And so, yeah, you've been involved. You ran Iditarod in 2007. Brennan, is this where you wanted to take this? A little, we can.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. We can go here. Definitely.
We ran the race. You've been at the race this year, dude. I saw you. You said you were like 3 weeks grinding. Just you were at Iditarod checkpoint, the halfway checkpoint, or was it? No, sorry, Cripple.
This Cripple, yeah.
You were at Cripple for several days before a musher showed up, and so were other people were there for longer. So you've been, when you come and volunteer for a race, it's not just like show up for a couple of days and go back home. It's like, dude, and then right before that, you were just finishing with stage stop. So you're like, you got to, you're really dedicated to the cause here. So yeah, how many years have you been doing Iditarod since you ran in 2007? How many times have you been involved with the race since then?
So in 2006, Mark Nordman was still the race marshal in Wyoming, and I had run Wyoming, and Mark knew that I was planning on running the 2007 Iditarod. So he invited me up and said, "Why don't you come up? I'll get you out to a couple checkpoints. You can work as a checker, what they call trail crew now, and you can kind of see a couple checkpoints, how they're set up, and you can watch the field move through at 2 or maybe 3 different checkpoints. I think it'd be a good experience for you." And of course, I was like, "Yeah, I'll do that." So I rode up with Doug Swingley. I drove up from Wyoming to his place in Montana and hopped in the truck with him and rode up with Doug, and then went out and worked at a few checkpoints. Primarily, I was at Cripple and Koyuk. So that was my first exposure, other than just being a real diehard Iditarod fan. So, and then I ran in 07. That was Lance's first year. It was a tough year. It's really cool. I'd rather have a tough year than an easy year if I'm only, possibly got one crack at it. And then this 2024 is my third year as a race judge, and I'll be there 2025 this coming
Race judge. Okay, I misspoke.
Yeah.
It was not a race official. It's a race
I'm
judge.
an official. My title is race judge.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I got, I'm not going to get us confused, but there's the officials, the race judge, there's the umbrella that race judge is underneath. And there may be another position that's official too, right?
I don't know if they don't technically know. They probably consider the lead vet a race official.
Okay.
But primarily, I think that's reference to the race marshal and his judging staff.
Okay, gotcha. And so okay, continue. You got to the last 3 years be a race judge, and yeah, what about before that?
No, that was since I ran in 07.
Okay.
I just, I could make it work. And I called Nordman and I said, "Hey, I'd love to do this. If you need somebody, I'm available."
Sweet.
Nice.
And someone that had been working with a big race like this stage stop in Wyoming, yeah, you're clearly a fit to handle that. And okay, so I'm processing. I'm thinking. All right.
I'm curious. Just I'm looking at your 07, like the results, right? And it's like there's 58 or something finishers. There's another 24, 25 that didn't finish or withdrew. Since Sean and I have been doing this podcast, that we're looking at like 30 and 40 numbers like that. So I'm just like, what was that experience like? 80 teams, Lance at the beginning of his reign with the Iditarod. I'm just curious, any stories from that, anything that's, just anything about that experience that is kind of note.
Yeah, lots of stuff. But I think there were 82 teams that entered, which was a lot. They had more the following years. They were approaching 100, but it was still a lot of teams, 82 teams. I was an experienced musher. I'd been doing it for 8 or 9 years. And so I felt confident, but still it's Iditarod. You don't know what you're getting into. You, as a rookie, you never know if you're going to get that buckle until you get there. And I had a young team. A lot of my dogs were, just shy of 2 years old. So a young team. And it was a pretty challenging trail. I remember, just like each run, I was like, my gosh, that is the toughest run I've ever done. And I had, training in Wyoming, I'd intentionally go out into the harsh weather, whiteout conditions just to, I could get experience, dogs could get experience. I did guided winter camping in northern Minnesota, but still there's nothing like it. And I remember I ran into GB Jones at Roan and I said, "Man, you run this a bunch and it seems really tough." And he goes, "Well, it is this year for sure." But remember he said, "How many dogs do you have?" And I said, "I have 16. And he said, "Well, you keep doing what you're doing, get to McGrath And if you still have a solid dog team, then, you're well on your way to that belt buckle. And that's pretty good advice to anybody, is get a somebody that's new at it, that needs some advice, is, get your dog team to McGrath, get over all that stuff, get through all that stuff. And I remember in McGrath, there was a newspaper on the table in the checkpoint. Somebody interviewed Martin Boozer, and he said something like, any rookie that gets to know him this year deserves more than a belt buckle. And so that it was good to hear that vicariously that Martin had said that I wasn't nuts. It was a tough year. But yeah, with the young team, my sort of approach was, just develop a routine for these guys, get them confident in the routine, that there is a method to this madness, that we're going to run for a reasonable amount of time that is somewhat predictable. And we're running to something, we're running to straw, we're running to food, we're running to rest. And that, that's the cycle. And so my theory was I get my young, inexperienced dog team to learn that they're running to something, that there's a goal, which is the food, the straw, the rest, and make it fun. Plenty of rest for a young team like that is important. And, I just had the mindset of, even though I'm not running with, the top teams, in a way I am competing with them, because, all of our jobs as Iditarod mushers is to do the best you can do, take the best care of the dogs that you have, and do the best you can do with what you've got. And so in that sense, you are competing with everybody else out there. So yeah, it was just an amazing ride. One other thing I remember, I left White Mountain, and White Mountain, as a rookie, you get to White Mountain, you're like, wow, White Mountain, one more run basically. And I'd heard about, the Topcock Hills and the Blowhole and all that. And when I ran it, it was like calm and warm and sunny, and the dogs were almost bored. And then a couple of years ago, when I was a judge in White Mountain, I'm like, I want to see this section of the trail again. So I rented a snow machine and rode it. And again, it was calm and warm and sunny. But, as Sean knows, it's not always like that. But no, it was fantastic. It was, definitely one of the greatest experiences that I've ever had to run the Iditarod. It's a magical thing.
So a couple follow-ups to that. So going into the Iditarod, what was the longest race or series or mileage that you had done in one kind of given go or whatever?
I think my longest qualifier is it 300 or 400 miles, Okay. So yeah, so
you were out there almost double what anything you had done before, pretty much. Is that right? In terms of like time wise? Yeah. I guess if you haven't done the Quest, I don't know. I haven't run every race out there, but right.
If you haven't done like the Quest, after that 400 miles, it's undiscovered country as far as how you handle that.
Right.
But again, you just in it for the long haul, especially as a rookie, the goal is known. The goal isn't, being the first to wherever or getting to wherever as fast as you can. But, that's the other thing is if you take care of your team early in the race, then you're in such better condition to do things, to use strategy in the second half of the race. You're not in, repair mode or something. I remember I was in Grayling, I think, when Lance finished, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to do something here.
Brutal.
And I remember I sat down and I worked out a new schedule, because my first schedule was out the window by then, but I worked out a new schedule to where, okay, how can I get to Nome by the banquet? And that's what I did. I got to Nome when the banquet was just before it was getting ready to start.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like that's Brendan, 90% probably more of the people that start the Iditarod have never ran more than, I mean, there's the Kobuk 440. And if you've done that, you're like, and done that well, you're more than qual. It's like, that's like an extra credit,
Right.
for your test.
Yeah.
And then there's they just recently, since the Pandy, they have a 550-mile Yukon Quest.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's recent. So most people, that's what's fascinating about being like a rookie in the Iditarod is you've probably only gone 300 miles. Most people have probably only gone 300 mile series. And so, yeah, and that's where that getting that as much knowledge as you possibly can from people who have done it and being with those people out on the trail, doing something like the stage stop where you get to maybe talk to some of those people like Warren, who's there at the race, and you and get and because there's I mean, it's been done so many times. We know this is how to be successful, and you've just mentioned it. It's coming into through the first third of the race with a strong dog team, and there's a huge portion of your decision making and your dog care that way into that. Like, most of it is on you, and there's a significant 20% is just good luck. Having good luck, good trail conditions. Not nailing the gorge just right. You never really know what you're doing the first round. But yeah, that's such a cool era to have been in the Lance Mackey times. I'm sure obviously you saw him at the start line and at the banquet, and I'm curious, like, you got to be in this 80 plus musher race, and now you see these 30, 40 musher races. And I've probably said it in the microphone a couple times. I actually kind of like the smaller event. I guess I wasn't a huge part of when there was 80 mushers, but I got to see the 17 Iditarod and went to the Nenana checkpoint, and I saw 70 plus mushers rolling into one checkpoint, and I was like, yo, this is crazy. And I was like, I think I know a lot of mushers. And it's like, I only know like 15 of these, I was like, I don't even know 55 people are, and then you go and do it from a fan's perspective, 30 or 40 mushers. I mean, you got from now until March to be listening to every single minute of Mushing Alaska and learn about these mushers, and you can know each of their stories by the time they're getting to the finish line. So it's digestible from a fan's perspective. Then like from a race perspective, it's also like logistically maybe a little bit like simpler to deal with, 30 times 16 dogs versus 80 times 16 dogs.
Yeah.
So, there's obviously those. So I was just like, and then the cons, like, all right, we'd probably be cooler to have, it's a little bit less competitive maybe now than it was. It's still very competitive. Still got some really strong teams that we don't know who's going to win. But yeah, super competitive back then. And then, yeah, if you're like a rookie and you just coming up and running your first race, like someone like you, fans didn't know who Dan Carter was. Maybe if you ran it this year, you'd be like, oh, who's this Dan Carter guy? Like, there's only 30 mushers. So what do you think of some of the pros and cons? Well, the big race having big numbers versus being down to more like 30, 40 mushers like it has been the last couple of years.
Yeah, I'd like to see more teams particularly from a fan perspective and just like, longevity of the sport and the race. I'd like to see, a bigger pool coming in every year. From a judging perspective, you could say it's easier, maybe. I don't know that I look at it that way. The one benefit from a judge is fewer teams, you probably get to more checkpoints because you're closing out checkpoints probably quicker, and so you're not needed, so you can leapfrog. that's fun from a race judge's perspective is hitting, 4 to 5 checkpoints and seeing the field move through each one. It's an incredible learning experience. And I think it's also good for the mushers too, when they see the same judges multiple times. I would hope that when a musher comes into the checkpoint, especially later in the race, they're like, "Oh, Dan's here." Okay, I feel a little better. Hopefully, should be a smooth checkpoint. Hopefully, like one thing I noticed about last year's Iditarod is it seemed to me that some of the rookies in the back were maybe unnecessarily pushing themselves a little too much, because I think they thought they might get left behind. And that really wasn't the case. And at least at that point. And I think what I was trying to convey to a few of them was like, look, you're not behind. What you don't want to do, you don't want to get a situation where you're the only guy in the checkpoint, and everybody else is gone. Because that's when somebody might start looking, hopefully thinking maybe they'd realize, hey, if the 3 or 4 of us who maybe need a little more rest for our teams, if we all agree that we're going to do this, then they basically shifted the back of the race a little bit and given themselves more of a cushion, instead of, them all feeling like, I got to get out of this checkpoint. I got to get out of this checkpoint to keep up with the next group in front of us. Whereas if they would collectively had just slowed down a tiny bit, they would have given themselves a little more cushion and not caused any problems,
That's a big difference, I think, with one of the biggest differences with the smaller numbers and Iditarod is that the rookies, what is required to be maintaining competitiveness in the race and not having the race wait around for you. When you have 80 mushers, it's like, all right, you're going to have people finish in 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13 days. Well, it's like, no one's finishing in 14 days when there's only 20 mushers or 30 mushers. So, the standard that you have to have your team trained at for Iditarod as far as conditioning and training, it's got to be, that's the reality is, if you end up, I'm back with 2 other mushroom teams and now we're halfway. Well, maybe those 2 guys scratch and now you're 60 miles behind the next musher, now you got yourself a situation. So it's tough. It's tough for you as a race judge, and Warren and Mark have had to make some really tough decisions on that end of things over the years. So that's really cool to hear you say that.
Yeah. I mean, camping out and making a vacation out of it is one thing.
Sure.
Taking a reasonable and adequate amount of rest is completely different,
Right. And, basically, if you're taking, to me, what I think of is like, if you're taking more than like 6.5, maybe 7 hours, okay, sure. Obviously you have the mandatory 8-hour rest, but if you're going and running 45, 50 miles and then resting 8 hours, running 50 miles and resting 8 hours every single time, at this point, where the pace of the race is at, that you're going to have to at some point make that 8-hour rest a 6-hour rest. And that's,
well, you see over resting too.
Yeah. Sure.
And it not, because maybe the musher just doesn't know. It's like, you have to have some kind of a consistency to the rest, and you can't overrest them. I think
there is definitely an overrest. I think that's agreed upon universally by almost every musher. What is the extra hour of rest? So if you take a 3-hour rest and you change it to a 4-hour, that extra hour is very meaningful to the dogs, recovery and rest and all the things. If you take a 6.5-hour rest and you make it a 7.5-hour rest, that extra hour, the benefit of it is like not that great. In fact, it may, you could go as far to say as it's even a negative benefit, because you're the dogs are kind of like, all right, now we're like settling into the race is over mode. Let's hang out for a few days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I mean, kind of like what Dallas says, it's what does my team need? That's really what you got to, what you should be focused on is what does this team need right now? And if they need a little more rest, then give them the rest and don't worry about anything else, because that's the absolute most important thing is what the dogs need. And, granted, you have to go through a learning process to figure that out, but that's that one thing. It's really cool as a race judge to see the top teams and have a really upfront view of the Iditarod as it unfolds. That's really cool. But another thing is also watching, the rookies and as they come through and, maybe making a difference of whether or not, a rookie, makes it all the way or not, just whether it's a little bit of confidence or a little bit of, just casual advice or, hey, don't worry about this, you're fine, or that kind of thing. Is it, because it's such a learning experience as a musher if you approach it correctly.
I getting to be at Nikolai and seeing some of the rookies there, and then being at White Mountain and seeing the same rookies, and I hadn't seen them. I think I saw maybe in Cripple in between too. I mean, and this goes the same for like rookie sled dogs too. It's the same, similar process. Okay, sure, it's not the same, but like, you see them and Nikolai and they're like, yo, this is what we're in mile like 180 right now. This is insane. This is already the hardest thing I've ever done. And then you get them, in Cripple and they're like, all right, you can see in their face, they've been hardened by persevering through their tribulations. And then you get to White Mountain and they're like, oh yeah, like they're like, this is when I loved hearing this from rookies that get to White Mountain and they'd be like, yeah, it's not over, man. A lot can happen between here and Nome. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a veteran right there, and so you can see that change. And same with the sled dogs. They're 2 years, 3 years old. They never run a race. We're like, all right, cool. We did 300 miles. That was sick. Let's go ahead and head on back. And they're like, no, man, like you guys are just getting into your stride. And so they learn, wait, can I do this? I think I can. And then you see them at the finish line. And they're like, 1,000 miles, dude. That was like, it's kind of easy. Yeah. We were going to do 3,000, so it's cool to see that transformation for you and for me and getting to be out on the trail.
Yeah. It's rewarding to see, to see dogs in your team that you've been working with for so long to see them, gain this, if you do it right, to gain this confidence just over, a matter of days. They're really, they change. They're more mature. They're more confident. They just, I have to think that a dog that, finishes Iditarod, well is a different animal. They've gained some sort of a wisdom, a canine
Absolutely.
wisdom,
I can just picture the canine like polishing its glasses and putting the glasses on. Good day. Did you have any questions for me, Seth? So we're coming towards the end of our time. I think Brennan,
yes, sir,
brother. Maybe we can ask Dan a couple questions to wrap things up.
Yeah.
How does that sound?
I've got some
just some fun questions.
There's supposed to be some quick hitting questions.
Okay. And Brennan, I do think it's important to ask one more question that's not maybe a quickie, but just like, do you have any experience? We've just recently had the tragic news that Stu Nelson passed away, and I know you've been involved with the race more than a few times, of course. And I bet you like in 2007, like maybe you had an interaction with Stu, and for him, he probably was like, yeah, you're one of like 500 mushers that I've been, guiding through this rookie process over the years. But I don't know if you have any like comments or stories would be great of Stu. And if not, it's all good. But I just figured I'd ask. I feel like we're probably going to ask everybody for this season, you know?
Yeah. I don't know that I necessarily have any stories about Stu, but just what I always, my memories of Stu was anytime I ran into him, whether it was at the Lakefront Hotel or, McGrath or Nome or checkpoints in between, he was just always really nice to me, just very kind and, wanted to ask me, before we talked anything about the race, he wanted to know how I was doing. And he was just a good guy, I mean, he was just a nice guy. And I always enjoyed running into him and talking to him, and I miss him.
Yeah, I remember like watching as a fan after I raced in 22 and 23. And he would just be like, walking down the middle of Anchorage, start, in a cohort of officials and veterinarians and volunteers. And Stu, how's it going? He'd be like, hey, Sean, good to see you. Just always, super nice. And I got to see him being a little stern too when it comes to dog care. He's not messing around. I've seen that spark in his eye when he starts to talk about his field of expertise. But figured I'd ask you, and we appreciate you and saying those kind words about Stu. But we can go to some quick questions with Brendan Christopher Underwood here.
So just curious, what was your favorite checkpoint in the Iditarod race?
That's a tough one. I mean, Roan is a pretty cool place. Flying into Roan is pretty epic. I've got some great video of flying in and out of Roan. Just a neat place where it sits geographically. It's on that little spit where the rivers, meet. It's just after the gorge. It's kind of the leaping off point in a sense, that first, really long run into the interior, where you might have to break it in 2 chunks depending on what you're doing. And so Roan's very cool. Either the halfways, Cripple or Iditarod. I like both of those just for what they are, how they're set up, the amount of time that and effort that Iditarod has put into making those 2 checkpoints what they are. I mean, it's a remote checkpoint, but from an official standpoint, you can chill out in Cripple or Iditarod thanks to Chris and Bob and Mark Nordman's and everybody else's efforts that's created those checkpoints and made them what they are. This is Cripple right behind me here, I believe. So I love both of the halfway checkpoints. That's when the race really starts to shake out, because, either everybody's, by the time they've gotten to those, they're either off their 24 or they're 24ing there. So you kind of, it's when when it sort of hits the road really there, all the starting differentials are pretty much made up by then, and you can take a hard look at what's happening. So from a diehard race fans who's looking at the numbers and everything, that's when you can really get your pencil out and start to Danny Seavey it. And then White Mountain, every checkpoint I've been to has been great, but White Mountain is cool because it's kind of the place, right? So if I can get there as a judge at White Mountain, I like doing that. If I've worked from driver's meeting, on through, then that point, I pretty much, have hopefully established some kind of a relationship with all the mushers, and to see them there at White Mountain and hopefully, shake their hand and wish them luck for that last 77 to Front Street, then that's pretty cool. I mean, last year I got to, welcome Dallas into White Mountain year before. Ryan Reddington, who I've known for a long time, was real. As a real kicker to see him. Have a pretty substantial lead coming in there. It's a cool place. I remember just being an Iditarod fan and seeing video footage from White Mountain, Greg Heister or whoever doing an interview. It's like, God, what would it be like to, be hanging out in White Mountain with the leaders? And, so those are the ones I'd probably name. But, I've been to Koyuk and Elam and a bunch of others, and they're all, great places.
Okay. So you got quite a few favorites, it sounds like.
I do.
Did you have a like one run that really stood out to you about the Iditarod? Like your favorite run, your favorite, I don't know, favorite Northern Lights moment, something like that?
I can remember every single run, and I can account for details in each one. I don't know. I remember when I left Unalakleet, and we kind of went across the flats there and then started to climb up into the Blueberry Hills. And I hooked down, and I had one of those little wind and click cameras. And that's once you get up there, you can't really see the ocean, the sea from Unalakleet. You have to get up on the hills to see it. We got up on the hills, and I could see out over the ice to where the ice turned back into water, and there's some rocky islands out there. And I was like, wow, I just drove a dog team across Alaska, and now I'm staring out across the Bering Sea coast, making my way to Nome. And so I took this hook down, I took this camera out, and I was hiking up the hill a little bit to get a shot of the team in profile with the Bering Sea in the background. And I felt something on my leg, like brushing the back of my calf. I'm like, what is that? And I turned around, and it was my lead dog. The lead dog had brought the team up thinking that's where I wanted to go. So it left the trail and went uphill and, rocky, nasty. I'm like, I'm getting to Nome. This dog team just followed me thinking that's, that I wanted to march him up this hill instead of staying on the, the side, the contour of the trail. And so that was a pretty big moment. I got a tear in my eye there, I think. And at that point I had a lot of confidence. I'm like, we're getting there,
Nice. So two more, top 5 mushers. Should we go there
this year?
Just in general, like your top 5. If you were putting together like a Mount Rushmore, if you will.
Lance Mackey. I have to give him that for sure. I don't want to leave anybody out or anything either. I mean, I got to hand it to Jeff King as well, with his victories and everything he's done, and his stamina and what he's still doing. And I think he's a positive force in the sport. All the people he's brought through his kennel and shown, what proper mushing is, his innovation with gear and equipment. I have to include him there. Martin Boozer. I've heard. I haven't really gotten to know Martin, but I've listened to some interviews he's given, and the knowledge that he has about dog training and what a dog is, and how a dog thinks and behaves, and just a master class in how to be a good parent or keeper of a sled dog, of an animal like that. I have to give it to Martin. That's 3. I don't know. Dallas Seavey. Okay.
Kind of had to say it.
Yeah, I've gotten to know Dallas a little better each year. He's always been what I like about Dallas is he loves to talk about dogs, and I love to talk about dogs, and I really enjoy listening to his perspectives. He's very keen on it. I think he's a really humble guy in all my experience with him. I mean, I remember my first year as a judge in Nome. He invited me to a card game there in Nome with a lot of the top mushers, and he didn't know me very well then, but he invited me in, and thought that was pretty cool. Is that 4?
Yep.
Yeah, that's 4. You got one more. It's hard to fit if it's just 5 in that
the
list.
5th one's the hardest one.
And I'll just throw this out there. It doesn't have to be an Iditarod like name. You could throw out someone, that's like a lower 48er or something, just for whatever that's worth. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm going to say Ryan Reddington. I've known Ryan for a long time as well. I remember when I was in the parking lot there at the Restart in Willow, he and his brother came up to me and just sincerely wished me luck. And to have, 2 Reddingtons come over to my truck, some rookie from Wyoming out of 82 teams, that they took the time to come over and do that when they had other stuff to be doing, meant a lot to me. And I've gotten to know Ryan better over time. He's just a hardcore musher. He loves it. It's in his blood, obviously. And, kudos to him for continuing the legacy that his grandfather started. He's a great guy. And so that's my 5, but there's a ton of other mushers that I have tremendous respect for. Anybody that, really, does it right, is on my list. I don't care where they finish.
Yeah, there's something to be said about that. All right, last one is, if you were to listen to our podcast and wanted to hear a guest, who would you want it to be? But you have to help us get this person on the podcast.
Oh, well, I can probably help with that. I'm trying to think who'd be a super interesting guy. I mean, I don't know how many times who all you've tried. I mean, any of the 5 I mentioned, exception, I guess, of Lance.
Yeah, I'm Jeff's neighbor now, so I've been just trying to just nudge him over, like, yo, dude, you should come and talk with me on
Oh yeah.
pod. So
yeah, no, he should, and I bet he would. I don't know, Mark Nordman, Greg Heister.
He's also my neighbor, so I can one of those two.
Greg Heister, Bruce Lee.
We did have Greg on, yeah.
Did you? Oh,
it would be good to have Bruce on though too.
Yeah, Bruce Lee. Warren might be a good one. Warren Palfrey, new race marshal. Get some perspective from him on that. He's a great guy. I mean, he's really top notch guy. I would think
that's a good list right there.
Yeah. I don't know if I said Dallas. I'd love to hear Dallas. Ryan Reddington.
Yeah.
Any of those guys. One guy I really liked was Josh McNeil. He was a rookie, and he's got that veterans program going, and a lot of respect for Josh.
Are you talking about Josh Robbins or Josh?
Isn't
Robbins?
it? Is it Robbins?
Robbins, I think, is the one that's the veteran.
That's right. McNeil. Okay.
He did.
Apologies there.
Yeah. No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah.
I mean, Josh McNeil's pretty sick too. We want to get Josh Robbins on. I talked to him a little bit.
Okay.
His wife. So yeah. Well, I think all right. We'll do for Dan. We'll do this year. We'll get those guys on.
Yeah. There's a ton of people I'd love to hear you guys sit down and talk to.
Nice. Awesome.
Who doesn't like to talk dogs? So yeah, it's in dogs. So
it's true. I'm excited. It's snow right as I'm looking out the window. It's been nuking snow all day.
Wow.
And I'm excited to get out there and play in the snow at some point here in the coming days. So
it's nuking snow here at 64 degrees, by the way.
64 degrees. Well, thank you so much for coming on. You can hang out for a little bit. We're going to stop recording, but if you want it, we can talk. We can do a quick debrief off the record, and then. But yeah, thanks so much, man. That was such a enlightening conversation. Talking about the different races and your experience, and so really thank you for staying up. What is it? Almost 10 o'clock over where you are, and Yeah, thanks, man. That was really fun.
Yeah, thank you guys for the time and energy you're putting into this podcast. It's a great thing, and I know I enjoy it. Enjoy listening to it, and I'm a fan. And I think it's good for the sport. And there's a lot of folks out there that want to hear some interesting insight and the stories that we have to tell.
Thanks, Dan. That's kind words. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.